So I am so appreciative that you all are joining us today for this conversation where we will talk about how we mentor one another, how we strengthen one another, how we strategize, how we make a way forward, and how more than anything, we keep the joy, the focus, and the strength of our communities in all that we do and continue to form strong leaders for our future. I'd like to now take you to hearing some remarks from another great Black woman leader, our board chair, Representative Terry A. Sewell. She represents the 7th Congressional District in Alabama, and she is an example of the kind of powerful Black women's leadership we are talking about. She is the first ever Black woman legislator to Congress ever elected from the state of Alabama. She's a trailblazer, she's a record maker, and I'd like for you to listen closely as she leads us at the beginning of this discussion.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Nicole, for that warm welcome. It is truly an honor to welcome you to this powerful conversation on Black women's leadership, one that is not only timely, but essential to the progress that we hope to achieve. As chair of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation board, I am so proud of the commitment that CBCF demonstrates when it comes to developing and fostering Black leadership. That mission is at the heart of today's discussion. As Black women, we have long been the backbone of movements, institutions, and industries, yet we continue to face systemic barriers to leadership. Despite making up a significant portion of the workforce, Black women hold only 1.6% of the executive leadership positions in Fortune 500 companies. Black women make up just 4.4% of C-suite roles across all industries and fewer than 2% of U.S. law firm partners. In higher education, Black women represent only 5% of college and university presidents, and in politics, despite being the most reliable voting bloc, we as Black women make up less than 5% of the elected officials nationwide. These numbers make it clear. While Black women are driving progress, systemic barriers continue to limit their access to top leadership positions. That stark reality underscores why this conversation is so important today. In the halls of Congress, in the Congressional Black Caucus, and here at CBCF, we have seen firsthand the transformational power of Black women in leadership. We stand on the shoulders of amazing trailblazers who shatter glass ceilings. But with the rollback of policies that once created opportunities for us, we find ourselves in a moment where simply attaining leadership roles is not enough. We must ensure that Black women can sustain and thrive in leadership positions. That is why we are here today. This dynamic panel of accomplished Black women leaders will share their insights on mentorship, networking, and advocacy. They will help us identify our challenges and provide real strategies for advancement. Just as importantly, they will challenge us to answer the call of being our sisters' keepers. When Black women lead, Black voices are heard, amplified, and represented at the decision-making table. Our leadership is not just about individual success, it is about collective progress. So, as we engage in this discussion, let us commit to not only rising in leadership, but lifting as we climb. Thank you for being a part of this important conversation. Now it is my honor to introduce my dear friend, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Yvette D. Clarke.
Greetings and good afternoon. It is an honor to join you today for what will be a robust and empowering conversation. As chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, I'm proud to serve alongside 28 phenomenal Black women in the CBC. We are policy shapers, change agents, and fierce advocates for our communities. But let's be clear, while we are forces to be reckoned with, we cannot do this work alone. The road to leadership can be isolating, and the challenges we face are often magnified by the mere fact we are Black and we are women. That is why the power of sisterhood is so critical. The Congressional Black Caucus has always been a family, and for us, Black women within this body, sisterhood is more than a concept. It is a necessity. In these unprecedented times, we lean on one another, we encourage one another, and we amplify each other's voices. Whether it's policy battles, breaking barriers, or setting new standards of leadership, we know that our collective power is unstoppable. Leadership is not a solo journey. Despite our brilliance and dedication, we see the disparities. We feel the weight of the work and embrace the necessity of unity and shared progress. In the halls of Congress, in boardrooms, in communities across this nation, Black women are stepping up and standing tall. But the reality is that our success is often met with resistance. That is why the support we extend to one another is essential, not optional. We must rely on each other for mentorship, for advocacy, and for the support that ensures we rise together. Because when Black women lead, we do more than break barriers. We build bridges for those coming behind us. As we engage in this dynamic conversation today, I challenge each of us to ask, what does it look like for Black women leaders to support each other? For me, it looks like collaboration over isolation, forming strategic partnerships that leverage our collective talents and resources. It's also about wellness and how we encourage each other to prioritize self-care in a world that relentlessly demands we work twice as hard to be seen. Today's conversation is not just about identifying challenges. It's about creating solutions, building pipelines, and fostering environments where the next generation of Black women leaders can be seen, heard, and empowered. Because when we show up for each other, when we create space for each other, when we champion one another's success, we all rise. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our leaders who joined us this morning, Representative Sewell and Chairwoman Clark. Again, two examples of amazing Black women's leadership helping to move the country forward. I'm so honored now to have a fireside chat with one of our barrier breakers also serving in Congress, and that is Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett. Congressman Plaskett represents the at-large congressional district of the United States Virgin Islands in the House of Representatives, and she's currently serving her 6th term in Congress. For the 119th Congress, Representative Plaskett is a member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the Ways and Means Committee, and the Budget Committee. Very powerful committees where she is making decisions that, again, affect so many of us and ensure that she will continue to be a change maker. Welcome to you, Representative Plaskett. It's good to have you with us.
Thanks so much for being here with such a dynamic group of women. I see the chat in the chat, people signing in, sharing where they're coming from. I'm just so grateful to be here with you all.
Thank you. And again, as a point of personal privilege, Representative Plaskett, thank you for always being there to represent and support the foundation. That is also a mark of leadership. Take notes, ladies.
Well, thank you for all the work that the foundation does. Our office would never be complete without one of the fellows, one of the interns from the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. You all are building leaders, and their innovation, their energy, the ideas that they bring to my office have really supported us every year.
Thank you, Representative Plaskett. We appreciate that. We couldn't have said it better ourselves, so thank you. Let's get right down to it because I want everyone to hear from you. You know, one of the questions I get so many times from young women is, you know, what motivated you to do what you do? You know, people want to hear what your story is. They want to know what led you to that. Can you tell us a little bit about what led you to public service?
Sure. I have always been in public service, unfortunate for my bank account, but good for my soul. It has, you know, before even law school, coming out of undergrad, I worked in a congressional office, worked in congressional offices. After law school, I went and was a prosecutor in New York. I felt it was important for us to be on both tables in a courtroom for us to be there to advocate and to support our community. And then coming back to Washington, working on the Hill again, working in a political administration. It's always been my passion. Nicole, crazy enough, I grew up in New York City, lived in Washington for many years, and moved back to my ancestral home. Both of my parents are from the island of St. Croix in 2004 to get out of politics, to get out of the rat race, to go and live a quiet life on my family's home, to give to the community. I was in the private sector, worked in a lot of nonprofits, sitting on boards, volunteering as we all do, particularly Black women. We're always in 4 or 6 different organizations.
Of course.
And I kept complaining about what I didn't see happening, what I thought could be done in Washington. And my older sons and my husband one evening, one Sunday afternoon, just said, listen, run or be quiet. We don't want to hear it anymore. If you think these things should be done, then you should run. Or please stop disturbing our peace with all of everything that you've been saying. And I ran and didn't win the first time, but ran the second time. And I've been in this game ever since.
I love that story. And it touches on 2 important points that I'd love for you to expand upon. Number one, talk about how you use defeat as a way to leverage yourself or to propel yourself to your greater successes. I'm always telling students, you know, sometimes it's that moment of defeat or that moment of challenge that's actually going to be the thing that prepares you most for doing bigger things. Tell us how you use that, or how you focus on those moments of challenge, and how you then turn them around to use them to your benefit.
That's a great question. You know, I am an uber competitive person. I don't like to play games that I think I may not win. You know, I don't like just playing just for the sake of playing. I am not motivated by fun or by happiness. That's just not how I'm made. I'm made to be competitive, to fight, to win, to excel. Those are all things that were really driven in me. And losing is probably one of the most devastating things that can happen to someone like that.
Yeah.
And but it is a driver and a reality check. For me, that's what it was for me. That one, everybody's not going to like you. Everybody's not going to like your message. That maybe there were things that I could have done that I didn't. And that caused me to be a very different politician and elected official than maybe many others are. I have heard my prior boss, a former governor, say that people who have never lost an election are very cocky and don't understand how tenuous it all is to stay connected to the people, to stay connected to those that elected you, because in the same way they brought you in, they can take you out.
Exactly. You know, you said something else that was interesting, Rep Plaskett, which is, I had someone say this, a mentor say this to me: if everybody likes you, you're not doing something right.
Sure. I have very early on said that there were lines that I was not going to go over, that this job was not that important to me, that there were things that I would do that went beyond certain rules of my own, certain positions that I had. And I felt that part of leadership is bringing people to those positions, and bringing people to a place maybe that they had not thought about or had not been or were not empathetic to, for a greater cause. And that's leadership. You know, I think of what we saw in the Oval Office with Zelensky. That's leadership. Because one could, you know, he needs a lot of money from this man. You know, his people are in a difficult position, and he could have gone a very different way. But leadership is showing even those of his people, you know, they may not get this money, they may be defeated, that even in defeat, we have won because we've retained certain things about ourselves. That's the kind of leadership that he demonstrated. And that's the kind of leadership that I want to bring to the young people in my home, to not just the young people, Nicole. I always think about when I was away at boarding school from all through high school. There wasn't that many of us, a dozen or so, in a school of 900 in Connecticut. And people would talk with me about, people in the dorms would be like, oh my God, all of the maids, all of the people in the dining hall, the cleaning people. I was like, yes, because they're the people that pay my tuition.
That's right.
People like that are the ones who make sure that I have $20 to buy something, that when I go home to church are pressing, a couple of dollars in my hand to make sure that I can get on the train to go back up to school. And so I'm not just doing it for the young people, I'm doing it for all of those people over me who sacrificed for me to be where I am.
Absolutely. I hope you all are taking notes because there are some lessons here. And Rep. Plaskett, I complete similar walk. I remember, the Black women who worked in the cafeteria, in my college. And on those days when my student account was low, I didn't have that money. They were the ladies who said, baby, come on. We know you have to eat.
You're
but
right.
like recognizing those people, remembering those people. And I think, talk about who you center in leadership, because leadership is not about you. It's about who you center. Talk about how as leaders, whether you're an elected official, whether you're the president and CEO of an organization, how do you make sure that you are always centering the people who are at the heart of and who are to benefit from the work that you do?
Sure. It helps, having a family that keeps it real for you, who tells you when you're mucking up, or they didn't like
tells
something.
You to run or not.
Right. Or tells you when it's time not to. Or applauds you for the things that you do. Just this January at the when we had the vote for the speaker, I represent a territory and we don't vote for the speaker. And I was in the car that morning with my 15-year-old daughter and knew that my 20-something-year-old son was going to come by my office and see that proceeding. And I knew that they weren't going to see me stand up and say Hakeem Jeffries. And I had to figure out a way for them to know that we were seen. And that's when I approached Leader Jeffries and told him, listen, I'm going to be disruptive. I'm going to remind them about myself and Puerto Rico and the 4 million Americans that don't have a vote. But my centering was my children in that time, in that space, that they know that they were seen and their voice was heard. And I think that that's the thing that many of us do. I'll give you another story that really resonated with me when I first came to Congress. It was the Pope was coming to speak to a joint session of Congress. And they were discussing the protocols for security with the members of Congress. And they were talking about the number of tickets that we each had and where we would be seated. And Jim Clyburn raised his hand and he said, where are the support staff going to be? Where are their seats? How will they be able to see this? And the fact that he remembered them, the cleaning people, the office of the architect, the clerks, all of those people here in this tremendous complex, and he was centering them, that they needed to be a part of this, is something that, as a freshman, that stayed with me the entire time I've been here.
I think that will stay with all of us. That's a powerful example. Oftentimes, young leaders, burgeoning leaders want to know, how do I start? One of the things we say about our Leadership Institute is it levels the playing field. It gives you an opportunity. If you happen to be someone, who didn't come from a family where your parents were doctors and lawyers and they weren't friends with Congress people and they couldn't open those doors, we are here to give you that start. because all that matters is what you are bringing to the table, and that we think you have value, and we think you have possibilities, and that you're going to be a shining star someday. What advice do you have for people about just how to figure out how to start? How do you identify a person? How do you identify an opportunity? Even sometimes when it seems like it's not apparent to you, how you get started on your leadership.
Well, two things I would say is that one, don't limit yourself to mentors for people who look like you, to people who look like you. That some of my strongest advocates have been older white men. Who really uplifted me, gave me opportunities, said that I should be thinking bigger than the position that I was thinking of, and who supported me. And the other is, and I give this one particularly to young people, is when you get jobs or get opportunities, put your head down and do your work. In a time period that loves clicks and likes and followers, that the thing that will take you through the game the longest is actual knowledge and discipline to your craft. And that only comes from putting time in at the front end to actually master and understand specific skill sets, writing a press release, how to write effectively, how to speak effectively, how to research in a timely fashion, how to synthesize information and give it back in a very concise manner. That takes work, and that's not going to come to you through celebrity political gamemanship. And so I think the longevity of your time comes from that kind of work. And so, I tell anybody, when I have opponents running against me, when I have people coming up against me, I will outwork every mofo that comes in front of me. Ain't nobody gonna work as hard as I work. That's been my claim in everything that I do. When I last Congress, Hakeem Jeffries made me the ranking Democrat, the lead Democrat against Jim Jordan. And every hearing, I went in there annoyed that I had to be there, but actually amused because I knew the material way more than he did. And so I was going to be able to run rings around him to my own amusement and to his frustration because of that.
Yes. Well, Rep. Plaskett, that harkens back to that advice that I think so many of us get from our ancestors, from our parents in the Black community. And we as Black women know this. You have to be 10 times better. You have to work harder. And we carry that with us through everything. And that's that competitor in you. But I once had someone say, "You're overly competitive." And I said, "What do you mean?" Like, it's a good thing to want to achieve. It's a good thing to want to make sure that you come correct and that you have all of your skills in order, because that's what makes it impossible for people, or makes it harder, at least for people, to deny you when you are that good.
Yeah, my sons, I have 4 sons, and then my youngest is a girl. And my sons were talking about how, they would find it so amusing that as we were going to the church picnic, there would always be these games and stuff. And as we pulled up before we get out of the car, I was like, "Look, y'all know we got to win this year. I don't want to, we're going to act like we're having fun. Christian, you need to be the middle. Jeremiah, you got to be the anchor. We're going to beat them in this. And this particular family, I'm sick of them. They need to be brought down."
All in love, all in good love, right? Christian.
I just want to win. I just want to win. Winning is fun.
Yeah.
And, they said that knowing when to tamp that down, but also recognizing that some people are not going to win, and that they're trying really hard, and accepting that and supporting them. That's also part of it. Or bringing people along, right? Is part of what happens. If you haven't brought people along, I love, I have chiefs that no longer work for me now, that are in other sections. I love seeing how well they're doing. Of course, I make them pay for drinks when we go out, but I love that they are doing well. I love that I've been a part of that. In the same way that I know my success brings joy to the old woman in church, the mentor who gave me a shot, someone who brought me along at other places, all of that is part of it.
Absolutely. And you just made clear that another important aspect of being a good leader is knowing when to step back and step
Mm-hmm.
aside and give someone else space and voice to shine. Because one of the most
Sure.
important things I learned about being a leader is the ability to listen and the ability to let others speak. Rep Plaskett, I could talk to you for hours,
Mm-hmm.
easily, but we
Mm-hmm.
have to end. So I'm going to ask you this last question.
Uh-huh.
If there was one thing that you could tell all of the amazing women and men who are listening to this webinar today about leadership,
Mm.
what is the one piece of advice, or I don't even say advice, best practice? Because I always tell people, you create your litany of advice by listening to it all and taking what works for you and putting the rest in the circular file. So what's the one best practice you would give that you think everyone could benefit from?
Sure. I think once you come to a place that you're prepared and you're ready, the two things that I try to do is listen to those around me, who I've assembled, who can give me great advice, and then follow my gut,
Mm.
follow the spirit that's inside of me, that is going to lead me to whatever the Lord's destiny is for myself and those who I'm bringing along.
That's perfect, Representative Plaskett. Like you, I had a teacher who told me your gut never lies. So
Mm,
double double thumbs up for that. Amazing
thank you.
advice. Thank you again so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us. And please continue to do what you
And
do.
thank you. I'm looking at all these beautiful women. You guys are just awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, Representative Plaskett.
Thank you.
Back to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Nicole. Good afternoon once again. I am Jenny Patterson, the Program Manager for the National Racial Equity Initiative for Social Justice at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. It is my pleasure to introduce our dynamic moderator for today's conversation, Ms. Angelina Darrisaw, CEO of C-Suite Coach. Angelina Darrisaw is an award-winning entrepreneur and workplace inclusion champion. She specializes in overseeing the design and execution of system-wide corporate programs that create opportunity, access, and economic growth for working professionals. Whether she's building out a streamlined process to create more capacity for a corporate department, helping her team deploy a coaching program to develop a client's new class of leaders, or devising a strategy to diversify the supplier pipeline, her work ensures career advancement and economic opportunity are more accessible to all. Please welcome Angelina Darrisaw.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you everyone for being here today. Again, I'm Angelina Darrisaw, and I'm excited for this conversation because it's a critical and a needed one, as evidenced by the over 2,600 RSVPs we had for this and over 900 of you on this call. In this moment, with many shifts happening in our climate, the best resource we have for our growth is each other. And we are full of thought capital. Leveraging each other is how we are able to create strategies to get ahead. And we have the right people to talk about this. So I'm excited to introduce today's panelists. Today we have with us Erica Loewe, who has been recognized as the Route 100's most influential Black Americans, Essence Magazine's Power 40, ColorCom's 28 Black Women in Communications Making History Now, and the U.S. Black Chamber 50 Under 40. So many, many awards for her work, over a decade of experience at the intersection of media, politics, and entertainment. And recently, Erica served as special assistant and I'll also introduce Nikki. Communications and Marketing for the Council on Foundations and served as Deputy Director of Communications for Atlanta's Mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms. And she has a long history of community work. She's a dedicated advocate. She's my soror, a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and she also serves on the board of Everybody Wins. In addition, she's a proud Army brat and a graduate of Valdosta State University. Welcome, Nikki. All right, now you all have pre-submitted questions and we'll get to some of those. We'll make sure we address those, but I also want to remind you that we'll answer some of your questions live. So please submit those in the Q&A function. And let's dive in so we can hear about your journeys. I would love to start this conversation with having you share a little bit of your career journey and how it's defined your leadership philosophies. What are those key experiences and decisions that have shaped how you look at leadership? And I'll start with you, Nikki.
Thank you so much, Angelina. I'm excited about this conversation. Well, my journey, I think, is a little unique, and I call it unique because it started when I was a little girl. I actually have modeled my career path after my Aunt Beverly. She is a professional PR pro. She's been in the game for such a long time, enjoying retirement now. But I recall very early on as a little girl asking her, what do you do? Because she was just the fanciest, most well-dressed, had the nice apartment, all the things when I was younger. I was like, what do you do? She told me, I work in PR. And I said, okay, I'm gonna do that too. And so ever since then, I've been following in her footsteps, and she still serves as a mentor for me today. And so while the journey that I have taken, I never imagined it would allow me to see the things that I've been able to see, to experience the places and the people that I've been able to engage with. I'm grateful for every step along the way. So from starting out in local government, working in healthcare, working with law enforcement, working in philanthropy, and now in corporate America, I am honored to just be in this position now and have learned so much along the way.
Thank you so much. And I think that's a testament to we never know who's watching us, and our representation in the spaces we're in is incredibly important. Erica, can we hear about your journey?
Sure. Mine was unexpected, I guess I would say. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that when I got out of college, it was either I got to go to law school because my parents were telling me I got to go to law school, which I didn't do. Although I recommend going to law school if you don't know what to do. Or figure out how to do something that would make them leave me alone. And Barack Obama had just become president. And I knew if I could figure out a way to get to DC and be somewhere in the vicinity of Barack Obama, everybody would leave me alone. And so, luckily my cousin lived in Laurel, Maryland, and had a basement for me to stay in. And I just started meeting with people, and I had people at my university just kind of connect me with folks. And, I applied for the White House internship and I got rejected my sophomore year of college. And then I applied again and I got waitlisted. So I was like, I know there's a way to figure out how to turn this wait list into, maybe into a yes. And that's essentially what I did. Your network becomes your net worth, and people just kept introducing me to people. And we're all kind of separated in DC by a few degrees of separation. But I didn't realize that at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. And I kind of developed this mantra of, show up, dress up, never give up, and pull others up. And because I realized that has kind of been the theme of my career. Like if somebody invited me to do something or said, I have time for coffee, but I only have 15 minutes and you have to meet me in the next 20, like I would go, because you never know what that opportunity would present. And I would dress up, I would try to dress for the job that I wanted, not the job that I had. And I'd put my little blazers on right out of college. And I was really dogged about it. Like I was not giving up. I would meet with people, and then I would ask them to introduce me to someone in their network and continue. And I advise people to do that now. Like if you meet with somebody, don't stop meeting with people. It's when you stop having those meetings that you've stopped your job search or your search for the next best thing. And then once you get what you want, pull others up behind you. If I had opportunities or there were cool events where like cool people would be in the room, I would invite friends. And then as I got more senior in my career, I started having hiring authority, then I started trying to give people opportunities and creating mentorships and the like. So that's kind of been my mantra. Show up, dress up, never give up, pull others up.
Oh, what a mantra. I love that. And a beautiful story of resilience as well, and not being defeated by some of those initial no's. I'm glad you brought up mentorship because it's often cited as a key factor in our career advancement. And I want to know how have those experiences really helped you shape your journey? What have you gained? We heard a bit about mentorship in the previous conversation. How have you opened up your relationships with mentors, and how can we find mentors at this level in our career?
Oh, well, I'll go. I mean, yeah, there obviously there's mentorship and there's sponsorship, and I learned over time that that's very different. I think Congressman Plaskett hit the nail on the head. That I know we see these, you know, cool Black girls doing things, but oftentimes, you know, those aren't necessarily the people that are going to make the time or have the time to mentor you. You know, I say to folks, which is sad, never meet your heroes, because sometimes you meet them and they might not be what you think they are, but who knows, maybe the staffer walking behind them who actually, you know, has the contacts and is running the show might be willing to take the time to meet you. Or it in my case, you know, oftentimes it's the little white lady or the little white man who, you know, loves to tell me that they voted for Barack Obama and talk about my hair, but you know, it's like, okay, girl, but make that call, and they will. So I think you have to just be open. Again, you know, keep having conversations, ask people to connect you to other people, but don't make assumptions. You know, I think oftentimes we want it to be the cool hot girl that we aspire to be, but you know, be open to everyone around you. Sometimes it's peer mentorship. Sometimes it's, you know, it's not necessarily people super senior to you, but it's a friend of yours that is kind of on your level, but can kind of walk you through what they did. So I would just say be open and have as many conversations as possible. And that's what I did.
So glad
Thank
that you
you.
said what you said, Erica, in terms of never meeting your heroes. I actually, as I was thinking about the answers to these questions and how I wanted to respond, I've been thinking a lot about the people who have impacted the way that I show up in rooms and spaces and leadership roles based off of the behaviors I did not want to exhibit, based off of the behaviors that I know did not serve me well. And so from that aspect, I'm very intentional now about making sure that I am the person that I needed when I was coming up, right? And that I am showing up for people in a way that I know I wish I had. Not to say that I haven't had incredible leadership or mentorship or sponsorship. All of that absolutely exists. But I also have learned a lot from those people who have not necessarily been the kindest or have taken the time or have not necessarily guided me in the right way. And I'm grateful for all of those experiences. And I'm also very interested and fascinated by the journey of entrepreneurs when I think about this question as well, where from an entrepreneurial standpoint, you might want to meet the founder and want the founder to be your mentor, but there's a person that they have mentored and maybe that they have mentored that you need to start by talking with first. Or maybe it's the person that failed, right? Who hasn't necessarily accomplished all the goals, that have some insights to help you look around corners and watch where you're going and learn how not to make some of those same mistakes. And so I think Erica hit the nail on the head when it's about being more open in your perspective about who you seek information from or mentorship from. It's not always going to be the most seasoned or senior person that you will have in your back pocket or in your top 5 in your phone. It may be the person that they have impacted along the way, who can provide you with sound advice and insight that you need as well.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Nikki, because especially as we get further and further along in our careers, finding the capacity and the time to actively mentor becomes
Yeah.
more and more limited. However, I always think that there's still those moments of micro moments, really, of advocacy that we can all partake in. So I would love to hear a couple of examples of how you both have leveraged your positional power to engage in micro moments of advocating for other Black women.
Yeah, go to the word intentional. I think it's about being intentional about saying names in rooms that people will maybe never have the opportunity to enter. It's about introducing people to those individuals who may not always have the opportunity to meet the C-suite leaders, to meet the founders, to meet the president, right? And so I think that it's important for us to, when we tell somebody or we have someone's best interest in mind, that we hold tight to that commitment that we've made to them, to make sure that we're uplifting them in moments that matter most, that will be impactful, because it's the little things that matter. And sometimes just saying, hey, oh yeah, I know such and such can do X, Y, and Z, right? Or I met a person who does A, B, C, D. Now, to that point, that person on the other end needs to stay ready so that when the opportunity presents itself, they can move quickly. Now, that's a whole nother conversation that I won't dive deep into, but I think it's about being intentional at this point, because sometimes the best advocacy and the best sponsorship that we have is being able to open up our network to people who may not have access to it.
And I would say transparency and information sharing, like stop gatekeeping. I think
Yes.
we exist in this environment where there can only be one, and that's attributed to institutional racism, where oftentimes there would only be one and they would check that quota. But I hope that we're getting to a place in life where we're pulling other people in, and we realize that there's space for all of us. So share your salary. If you're in public service, it's on the internet anyway. You might as well tell the people what you make, tell the people what you did, tell the people the experience that you had. Like, be open and forthcoming. And instead of having that mentality of lack, just believe that God or whoever you believe in will work it out. And there's enough space for all of you. I know that I have saved folks time by being candid about what I experienced and what I'm making, and people have done it for me. But then there were those times where people, it's like, dang, if they had just told me, I wouldn't have had to go jump through hoops and go through this learning curve, and maybe we could have expedited this process, like frankly white people have been doing for decades.
Mm-hmm. To that too, Erica, there's another thing, just because the spirit of this conversation is about uplifting Black women and potential, but sometimes we got to have those hard conversations with each other too, when someone is not ready for what they think they're ready for. And maybe they just need a little bit more coaching and a little bit more love and attention. And so I do think that we also, while we have to be each other's hype person, hype woman behind the scenes, we also have to be willing and able to hold each other accountable and say, hey, sis, like, I know where you want to go and I believe in you, but there are a couple more steps I think you need to take before you try to jump off into the deep end, right? So that's that. Courageous conversation, someone said in the chat. I think that's a good way to say it.
Absolutely. Don't gatekeep that critical feedback, because that's ultimately what's going to help us grow. And I want to touch on your career transitions, as you've both worked in different spaces. You've navigated shifts between business and government and even nonprofit work. When you're making those transitions, how have you been able to effectively communicate your value and skills? That's something we all need to focus on doing as we focus on how we pivot in this moment.
Take that, Nikki. I like it.
Nikki, we can't hear you.
I'll go. I think, well, a couple things, and I'm in this beautiful space now where I just finished at the White House and I've been having all these various conversations, and it's actually been really fun. I highly recommend folks getting a coach, talking to recruiters if you can, using that mentorship, sponsorship, talking to people who are in places where you want to be. Also, maybe talking less to people who haven't done what you want to do or have done, so, realizing your dreams can experience a death by committee if you take too much advice there. But I think, you've got to just figure out how to connect the dots. So for instance, for me, I worked in communications at the White House. I worked in the Office of Public Engagement. We did sports, we did business, it runs the gamut. So I took a little bit of, everything that I did. And then I look at these job descriptions and I figure out where I want to be. And I just do what I can to connect the dots. And, after a while, you develop enough experience to where it's like, I can do just about anything. And we can't let imposter syndrome stop us from that either. Like, you can figure out a way to translate what you do in your personal and professional life to just about any job that doesn't require like brain surgery. But a lot of these, especially these public service and these communications types jobs, like you can figure out a way. You just have to talk to people who are willing to drop some gems, attend, information sessions like this. And like I said, I think a coach is really, really, really helpful.
Y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Erica, for jumping in there. But what I was gonna say, one of the things that I've started to do a little bit more confidently now, and again, it's a journey, right? Is to lean more into both sides of my personality. As a PR person, you are charged with having to be extroverted. You have to be a people person. You have to be able to put on, right? But in my everyday nature, I am the sit at home under my blanket by myself, watch a movie, read a book type of person. That introverted nature and part of myself reigns true on a lot of good days. And so for me, been able to now figure out how to bring that introverted part of myself into the workspaces that I'm in. And so when I first started, I was like, every time there's a meeting, you got to have something to say. You got to be able to have a comeback. You got to say something of value. Now I sit quietly, I listen, and I lean in when I have something actually valuable to add to a conversation. I'm able to allow my colleagues to share how they're thinking, how they're feeling, particularly in the work that I do and in the spaces that I'm in corporate America in particular. And so I have found great peace and joy in being able to acknowledge the fact that I am an introverted extrovert. And sometimes that introverted part of myself, it's okay for her to show up at work. And in spaces where I need to be a little bit more thoughtful about the way that I'm presenting something that could impact people who look like us, that could impact people who are in communities that need our support. And so I found it to be very rewarding for me to be able to be honest with myself about who I am and not feel like I'll have to be the person that has something to say every time the Zoom link comes open, right? Like, so.
Absolutely. We often use this acronym WAIT. Why am I talking? And making sure that we're listening, right, as leaders more than we're speaking so we can get that good insight. And I love how you talked a bit about how you leverage different aspects of your personality style to show up as a leader. I also think it's always been for me, my full identity has been an asset in leadership, who we are as Black women. And I would love for you to talk a little about that. How has your experience and your identity as a Black woman shaped how you look at leadership? Erica?
It's kind of a double-edged sword because who I am has absolutely benefited me throughout my career. Coming from where I come from, I remember and I tell the story all the time, when I first started at the White House, my grandma asked me if I was going to be cleaning it. And the cleaning is it's an honorable job, but that's not what I was doing. But that was her mindset, right? Because as Black people, we don't have, seats and decision-making rooms and tables in places like the White House. So I brought that with me, and I never took it for granted. And I had really, really hard days at the White House. Like, it could be a very miserable place sometimes. It also can be a very high stakes, high pressure environment that brings out the worst in people. But I never forgot that my grandma could never imagine in her wildest dreams that I could be in some of the rooms that I've been in. Whereas I think there are some people that might take it for granted because it's like, oh, my daddy was here, my granddaddy was here. I wasn't. And I think that's something that I definitely brought to the role. I tried to do my best in everything that I did. I tried to bring young Black people on with me because I knew that this was something that their ancestors had not seen either. But then at the same time, there were times where people had to talk to me and say, hey, I know you want to say everything that's on your mind, but sometimes you might want to pull it back. And I grew up in a house where, we were very blunt. People said what was on their mind, you shot back, and it was just kind of like, go, 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 go. But that's not how you necessarily get things done, particularly in a political environment around a lot of people who didn't grow up like that and who, may take that as you're an angry Black woman, or, you mean something a little more harmful than you did. So I also had to do a self-assessment And sometimes, and I think Nikki said, the power of being quiet, sometimes, not saying too much and not responding immediately with what I want to say. People talk to you sometimes in a really terse manner, and you're going to do this. And it's like, oh, you don't know, I'm from Liberty City, but that's not helpful in the moment. And later when I learned, hindsight is 2020, and looking back, every time I responded immediately, honestly, I regretted it, because oftentimes it kind of plays itself out. And sometimes you just got to sit and wait and watch and let it play out. So, I've had to make some adjustments in the Black woman that I am, while also bringing my full self to the table.
I love that. I had a mentor tell me years ago, and it has stuck with me in every job that I've ever had. You either play the game or you get played. And so from that standpoint, I don't know, a light bulb went off for me where I was like, well, this is all kind of like a game. And either you know the rules of engagement and you choose to play, or you show up to the basketball court with a football and think that you're going to make and effectuate change. And so for me, I've always had this idea around when I go into a job, what is it that, yes, I want to do a great job. I'm going to put in the effort. I'm like Congresswoman Plaskett. You're not going to outwork me. You're not going to outthink me. I'm going to be on top of my game. But at the same time, I'm also thinking, what am I going to get out of this experience? What do I need to learn? How do I need to grow? Where do I need to get to hopefully help push me along on my journey to my ultimate goals and ambitions, right? And so from that standpoint, it has taught me how to make sure that I'm measured in my perception and my perspective of how I show up at work. No, that doesn't mean that I'm lessening myself or I am quieting my voice in any way. It's about being making sure that you understand the environment and how the rules of engagement work, right? And so like Erica said, there have been days where I have literally had to sit on my hands and bite my tongue. Like you say, bite your tongue, I'm biting my tongue, trying to make sure that I don't say anything. But I have to always ask myself, is what I'm about to say going to help further my ambition and further the goals that I'm trying to reach? Is it going to create impact for the communities that I serve and the people who I want to see succeed long term? Or will this set us back in some way, shape, or form? And so I have to make sure that I am being thoughtful about how I show up in rooms. And sometimes that means like we know as Black women, we have to code switch. We know how we have to show up in spaces, and maybe it's one way with our colleagues that we know is a trusted circle, but be a bit more measured in rooms where it's like, okay, I don't know who these folks are. I need to figure out what the lay of the land is. And so I've learned to do that, I think, in a way that has allowed me to be earn trust with people in a really in a really long-term matter, have people who are speaking up on my behalf because of that. And because you are a representation of your network as well. I can't be speaking up for XYZ person and know that every time I speak up for them, they got a problem. They're popping off at the mouth. They've got something's always wrong. That may not be the person that I continue to quote unquote sponsor, right? Moving forward. And I don't ever want my behavior or my actions to impact the people who I also know that I represent, which is the network of people who have trusted me and poured into me.
Yeah, wow. What I really appreciate you saying is, what can I get out of this? And I think frequently we talk about the pay equity, but we don't talk about the other pieces of what equity looks like, is and us realizing our autonomy for ourselves and acting on that and figuring out other ways to have our goals met. And I think that's a critical piece of us figuring out our well-being in workplaces. So I'd love if you could touch on that a little bit. What have been some of your strategies for maintaining when so much is carried on your shoulders sometimes? How do you manage that and make sure that you're still taking care of yourself and you're getting out of things what you need in your career? Erica?
I had to learn to delegate. I like to do everything on my own. And it's like, oh, I got to do this. They're not going to do this right. It's okay. Nobody's going to die. Like, even if it's not the way you want it done, ask somebody to do it. Because people ask if you want help. And oftentimes they mean it. So I think learn to delegate. And then also, I'm very much in my self-care season. And I know people are like, oh, I don't have time, this and the other. Listen, I worked 24/7 in that White House. I'm also a caregiver. My mom has Alzheimer's. She's right upstairs. That like we all have things going on. But my grandma used to say, it ain't the sickest who goes the quickest, which basically means like you can take care of everybody else, but if you don't take care of yourself, you will crumble. And you got to figure out what that is for you. You know, for me, I like to read. I like to go for long walks when it's warm. I like to go to the beach when I can. I like to go to the spa, even if it's down the street at the little, the little plaza. Like those are the things that take me to a place of, calm and reset so that I can go back and spar with the world. So delegate and self-care are my top two.
To connect with you on that delegation part, because I'm definitely in that season of trying to figure out what that looks like, because delegation is something that is difficult, but I do believe, like you said, when you can master that, it could take so much strain off of you. And so I know for me, I talk to my family very regularly. My dad calls me and my sisters every day. And so from that standpoint, it brings me great joy. And I know that that is not something that everyone has the opportunity in their lives. And so I don't take that for granted. But I am so honored to know that that I do have a strong community of people around me that I can lean on when I just need someone to talk to. But I also have a therapist. So I have a therapist who is unbiased and moved by the things that I say. She'll, okay, girl, now let's get into it. And so she'll hold me accountable a little bit differently than maybe my family and friends will. But just like what Erica said, you have to know when it's time to shut the computer off. You have to know when it's time to leave the office. You have to know when it's time to make sure that you are not ostracizing your community, because there could become a point where you stop being the person that gets asked to go places, right? And then you're looking up and you have isolated yourself, and that's dangerous. And so I think for me, it's, again, going back to that word of intentional, it's creating that habit. I can't remember what the saying is, and there's a book about 10,000 hours and all of that. But it's about making sure that you're as consistent as you possibly can be in setting boundaries for yourself that are going to allow you to have that healthy as possible work-life harmony, right? It's not always going to be balanced. There's not 50-50 in this, right? But there are moments where on a Friday, excuse me, Amazon, I might cut out a little early because I need to go for a walk. I need to go to the grocery store because I've come up with some recipe that I want to try and make from TikTok, or you know what I mean? And so there are things that I do that bring me joy, like reading, like cooking, like going on long walks. And so that is the way that I'm able to manage and balance the heaviness that comes with being in these types of environments.
And the community piece is so important too, because it's often our community that helps us when we have, whether it's imposter syndrome or addiction to perfectionism or an internal talk track that's messing with you or saying you're not good enough. It's often our community that helps us recoup from that and build ourselves back up. Apart from that, how else do you deal with some of those negative talk tracks when you're facing those? And Nikki, please unmute. Yeah.
Me, that feels a sense of responsibility to the people who came before me. And so anytime I know that the negativity, it's kind of everywhere, especially now. But for me, I'm often reminded of the women who came before me. I have a great grandmother who was born in the 1800s. My grandmother and grandfather were born during the Great Depression. I have another grandmother who has a sixth grade education, but then I see my parents who have aspired to do some incredible things in their careers. And so for me, who am I to stop the legacy and the progression that has been laid on my behalf? Like, how dare I allow the weight of heaviness around me to inhibit me from pursuing and fulfilling the goals and the purpose that I know that God has placed inside of my life. I am a woman of faith, and I strongly believe that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so, but that doesn't mean that I don't have sticky notes all over my desk at home with constant reminders of things that will uplift me, with scriptures. I read my Bible every day. And so there are things that have to happen to help reshift the thinking. It's kind of like changing the channel in your mind. You can choose to keep watching Fox News, or you can change over to MSNBC and get something that's going to be a little bit more in line with your thought process, right? And so for me, it's about making sure I'm mindful of what I'm listening to, what I'm watching, what I'm reading, and ensuring that it is going to also continue the legacy that has already been set for me.
Yeah, and I see a lot of church in the chat. I know Carla and Reverend Griffin and others were like Jesus first, and I agree. You know, I'm meditating this week on Exodus 14:14. The Lord will fight your battles. You just need to stand still. And that is truly, you know, for me, it's prayer. It's tapping into my faith. You know, God has not failed me yet. So that's where it starts. And just talking to yourself more nicely, I think is also really important. You know, you can say, this makes me nervous, I'm going to quit, or you can say, this makes me nervous and I'm going to grow from it. Like you have to reposition your mind, but it starts with God.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. And I have one more question before I turn it over to the audience question. So again, make sure you put your questions in the Q&A. I always feel like we can't address success strategies for Black women without acknowledging that there are systemic barriers in place. Otherwise, we are being gaslit, right? And so we know that that's happening. We know that right now there are really concerted efforts to make sure opportunities are more and more limited. And I would love to hear from both of you, what are some of the ways we can take action right now to make sure that we're still advancing Black women in our careers despite some of these shifting dynamics? And Nikki, we can start with you. And Nikki, if you're speaking, please just unmute.
You remain quiet every time Erica starts speaking. So can y'all hear me now? So I've been thinking a lot about this even before today's panel discussion came across my radar. And the thing that keeps resonating with me is this idea of community, collective way forward. As much as I am aware and have a lot of thoughts around the space and time that we're in right now, I also refuse to spend so much time on the negative and want to focus more on how do we continue to build each other up, lift one another up, continue to make sure that we're expanding and growing as a community, particularly a community of Black women who are agents of change and powerhouses in our own right. And so there's a book out by Dr. Key Hallman here in Atlanta. It's called No One is Self-Made. I haven't had the chance to dive into the book, but I know it's full of a lot of jewels. Shameless shout outs, available on Amazon. But I do think that one of the things she talks about pretty intently is you're not going to do it alone. And I think in the season that we're in right now, we have to remind ourselves that we cannot go this journey by ourselves. There are probably 10, 15, 20 women on here in different categories of industry in this chat alone who could be working together towards effectuating change in one degree or another, whether that's education, public policy, food insecurity, housing affordability, etc. And so how do we make sure that we're coming together instead of being in isolation? How do we come together to make sure that we're lifting one another up? And we have surrounded ourselves with an environment that's going to benefit the greater community long term.
Retweet. I have nothing to add.
Wonderful, because we have a lot of audience questions for you. And thank you so much for sharing that. I feel encouraged hearing that and knowing that there's work that we're doing all in our different spaces. One question comes from Francesca Menez, and she asks, have you been in a situation or navigated a space where you are the only Black woman leading and managing a majority white team? How do you navigate that? Erica, it looks like you have a
Yeah, I have, or just been the only, Black person in the room. It can be hard. I think you gotta go in with the mentality, like I said, that faith, talking to yourself nicely, because if people are not going to talk to you nicely, so you at the very least should do yourself the favor of speaking to, hyping yourself up as you walk in. I think when managing, you gotta be really forthcoming and have conversations, initiate conversations with the team, trying to meet them where they are. I think it's also important to have your support system, whether that's your family, whether that's your friends, your kitchen cabinet, people that you can talk to and kind of vent, because you can't really vent to the team and it does feel like you're on an island. So there are a lot of ways that I think mentally you just have to kind of steel yourself up to deal with it. But there are going to be people, whether they're white, Black, blue, or brown, who just don't want to be managed. They got their own issues going on. They don't think that they should be under you. They think that they're more qualified. There's always going to be something. But I've also learned that most people's issues are none of my business. And I just got to kind of keep plugging along.
Absolutely. And to that point, I think that also applies for if you're managing across different generations. Anytime there's a power dynamic at play where there's some differences, those same rules apply. Another question in the chat, how do you get rid of the guilt that sometimes comes with setting boundaries when you take that break, especially if everyone is looking to you as one of the only Black women that are in leadership? Nikki, I'll have you take that one.
People how to treat you, and people are going to continuously have you work until you're broken, burned out, sitting in a corner listening Sade because you can't get your thoughts together. Or you can set boundaries that allow people to know, hey, I'm going on vacation on this week. I put it on the calendar. You figure it out, whoever you need to call to get issues or situations handled. I'll see you when I get back. Don't call me. I won't call you. You have to have kind of a dogged mentality about making sure that you are creating those spaces. Now, that being said, it's not easy all the time, right? But I do think that the more that you do it, the more that you say, hey, I know I'm on deadline, but I've got to eat something today. Like, I gotta stop and grab some food. You cannot live on coffee, Red Bull, whatever your Celsius, whatever your energy drink of choice is. There are going to be days that are harder than others, but you've got to set those boundaries. So I've got to eat today. I've got to move my body. So at some point, I'm going to have to walk away from this computer so I can at least go on a 15, 20, 30-minute walk to clear my head, right? And maybe the walk is a meeting, right? You can take the meeting on the phone and be outside moving your body. So I do think that the more you do it, maybe the easier that it gets. I won't say that it's easy up front, but you just got to start.
Absolutely. Thank you. And now, Erica, we have a question around delegation. Since you talked about delegation, would love to hear some more tips you have for managing and working with others. And this is a question from Maya Graham.
Delegation is really hard, and it's something that I am still working on. You have to also determine, who is in your trusted delegation circle and who you may not be able to delegate things to, because there are people that will offer to help, and it's just like, yeah, but you might not be able to do this. So I think, one, you have to determine, who those people are and who those people aren't. I also think, again, mentally, I have very much been a person like, nobody can do it like me. But it's also like, get off your own pedestal. Like, who do you think you are? If you died tomorrow, God forbid, like, they would just move on. The job will continue. Other people can do certain things too. So that is something that I've had to really work with myself. But when people offer to help, I just immediately say yes. Even if I don't have anything for them, I just say yes, be on standby, because yes, I'm going to need something. And it could be something as small as, can you just pick up breakfast for me so that I don't have to worry about that? Or it could be something as big as like, I need you to manage this whole part of the program. You got to figure out who can do what. But if you are so busy and so overwhelmed that you can't even like function, then there is something that you can ask anybody to do. And that could be people at work, that could be your best friend. Just give them something to do, anything. Just immediately say yes.
Thank you. And we have a question from Cheryl Moses. Nikki, I'll have you take this one. How can I address ageism in finding jobs?
Ooh. Well, it depends on both sides, right? Young people not being recognized for what they bring to the table, and our more seasoned experts who people feel it's time to kind of get into retirement mode. I don't have a really great answer for this one, but I think it's about making sure that you just continue to do the great work. And there's a scripture that says that your gifts will make room for you. You keep doing what you know is best and how you do it, but also be open to learning. Never stop learning. Always be in a constant mode of seeking to understand what's happening around you. Because for the younger person, you haven't been around the block enough times to know everything that the more seasoned employee knows, right? And how can you grow and learn from each other? How do you mentor up, and how do you, manage up? And how do managers learn from their younger employees, right? And so I think it's just about making sure that you keep a really open perspective around who you can gain insight from, and just continue to show up as your most authentic self.
Thank you. And I want to take one of the pre-submitted questions. As seasoned leaders, how do you approach collaborations with young professionals? Erica, if you could kick that one off.
Yeah, sure. I think it's important. I think, again, for me, at least, it's important to get out of my own head. And it's like, assuming that, they can't do certain things because of their age or because they just got here. How else do we learn, or how else do they learn if they don't get a shot? You got to where you are because somebody gave you a shot. So I think it's imperative that we collaborate, whether it's laterally, whether it's folks above us, whether it's folks below, especially as Black women. That is something that I really struggle to understand when we're in spaces and it feels like, there are just some Black women that just would rather not. And it's just like, but why? Especially now, in these times, like, we've got to stick together. We got to bring the young girls up behind us. We gotta benefit from the wisdom of those who came before us. And we gotta try really hard to be kind and get along with the people that are standing next to us, because we all we got.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Nikki, we have one specifically for you as a social sector leader collaborating with corporate social responsibility initiatives. I'm curious how you're navigating these spaces, given the current political shifts. Additionally, how do you balance accountability with your constituents?
And that's a good one. So I would say, from where I sit right now, the mission has not changed, right? And so I'm proud to say that I am in a role and I'm doing work that has been championed by the leaders across my industry and in the department that I work in, which is Amazon's corporate and communications function. And so with that in mind, like Congresswoman Plaskett mentioned at the top of the call, it has taken sponsorship and advocacy from white male leaders in the company who see value in the work that I'm doing. And so for me, unfortunately, I can't speak to how others are experiencing these shifts and changes, but I can say proudly that the work that I'm doing is being championed, is being uplifted, and it's being asked to continue in a really rigorous manner because the company believes in it. And so I'm proud of that. But in terms of how I navigate these spaces, I have to stay on mission. I know what the goal is, and I have to stay the course. So,
Thank you. And thank you, Ndidi, for that question. So it's come to the time for our final question. I'm going to combine two of the pre-submitted ones. If each of you could just summarize your leadership philosophy and also share a final piece of advice for young women of color looking to grow.
I'll go first.
Nick, are you talking, Nikki? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna reiterate my show up, dress up, never give up and pull others up, because that is truly how I have approached my career. You know, I believe in having faith, also summarizing that. And it's gonna be okay. I've been in a lot of situations in life where I thought the world was gonna end. And, you know, and had I not gone through those situations, then in November when Kamala Harris lost and I lost my job, I would have, you know, been in that mindset of it's, you know, the world's going to end. I don't have a job. What am I going to do? But we've been here, done that before. You know, we are Black women. We always rise to the occasion, and just know that whatever you're going through, it's called going through for a reason. You will go through it. You will have learned from it. You will be better because of it. So.
That kind of came to me last year as I was going through a more difficult time in my life. And oftentimes we hear about the story of the butterfly going from being the caterpillar, cocooning, and then coming out and flying. But as I started to look at it through a scientific lens, I recognized that there's this period of time within the process of the butterfly coming out of its cocoon into spreading its wings and flying, that the butterfly has to learn how to fly. And there's a period of time in all of our careers that we are going to have to learn how to fly. And that may happen over and over again as we are developing and growing and advancing in every part of our career journey. And so for me, I'm grateful for the periods of time where I've been able to pause and recognize that it's okay that I had to learn how to fly right before I just completely took off. And so that's the lesson that sticks with me very closely right now, because there are ebbs and flows in our career that we just have to be okay with. You know, there's a period for growth and there's a period for pause. And so there's that. So that's my lesson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And what a beautiful way to close. I would share mine that comes from my mother, which is don't let no be the final answer. I think we heard elements of both of that in both of your stories. There's always a way to figure out a new opportunity, find a window where you see a wall. So thank you for that. And I want to thank again CBCF for having us and for all of the gems you dropped, for the energy in the chat. Can't wait to go back and read more. And with that, I'm going to kick it back over to Jasmine for closing remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being with us this afternoon. My name is Jasmine A. Gillespie, and I lead our alumni relations efforts here at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. What an honor to be on a platform with such high-achieving, beautiful Black women. It was truly my pleasure to sit this afternoon and hear all of the wonderful nuggets that we heard from Chair Sewell, Chair Clark, to Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, and to our wonderful moderator, Angelina, and our panelists, Angelina, and to our panelists, Erica and Nikki. I just want to touch on some things. I have my sticky notes around here, like Nikki was talking about. I don't know if any of you all were the Black girls that watched Being Mary Jane with Gabrielle Union, but ever since that show, I too am a sticky note fanatic. And so some of the things that really stuck with me in this conversation this afternoon was one, accepting that defeat, right? That the defeat does not defeat you. It is a setup for you to go on and do greater things. Really, really love that dress up, show up, pull up, and never give up and pull others up. Really, really love that quote, putting that into my personal toolbox. But I personally hope that you are all feeling uplifted and reveling in all of this Black girl magic you've been a part of today. One of the things that really stuck out to me when you all were talking about delegation as a Black woman, similarly, when I was first starting in my career here at CBCF, I had mentioned to my supervisor at the time, like, hey, let me help you. I see that you're stressed out. And similarly to what you all discussed, it was a mix of, you know, I didn't know that I can delegate. I don't know if I can trust you with those things. And as I've moved up and now have people to report to me, I've had them say the same things to me. And so I love that we all kind of have this shared experience. We're learning as we're going. And like I tell people, this is all our first time living, right? And so we're all learning lessons as we go. I have a few things I want to say in terms of thanking all of the hardworking people that put on this production at CBCF. And one thing I want to highlight, a lot of people don't know this, but CBCF is just under about 40 individuals that work full time. And of that, under 40, most of them are Black women. And so what an honor it is to work at an organization that champions Black women leadership every day in everything that we do. I want to thank all of you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit with us, join us for this conversation, and be so engaged in the chat. I have to say, this is one of the best active chats I've seen in an online webinar to date. Just a few things before we close out. We want to make sure that you all are staying in the loop with CBCF. So make sure that you're following us on X, on LinkedIn, on Facebook to stay in the know of upcoming events like our annual legislative conference that will be September 24th through 28th. We're super, super excited about that. And of course, visit the website to check out more of our Center for Policy and Research. The documents and research they have available online is incredible. In fact, they just released Amplifying Black Perspectives, Insights from the 2024 Post-Election Survey, which captures the feelings and lifestyle changes of Black Americans as they prepare for the second Trump presidency. So please, please, please check out that research done by Black women and support your own. I want to leave you all with one of my favorite quotes that you'll always see in my email if you ever get an email from me. And I challenge you all to do this today and be who you needed when you were younger to a Black woman. So you see a younger Black girl coming along beside you, behind you, be who you needed when you were younger. Please take an opportunity to take our survey to rate this event by scanning the QR code that you should see on your screen, if not now, in a few seconds. And again, stay engaged with the CBCF. We look forward to seeing you at our next event and hopefully see you in Washington, D.C. for the annual legislative conference. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye-bye.